Salient information in the shortest amount of time available.
Good morning. Dan Nelson was scheduled to speak this morning, and he apologized for not being able to be here, and he asked me to deliver his remarks for him. First of all, thank you to Congressman Cardoza and Costa and their staff for setting up this forum, and more importantly for their relentless and tireless effort on behalf of the water users. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Please be assured that the San Luis and Delta Mendota Water Authority is doing everything that we possibly can to get water to south of Delta CDP contractors, and we are leaving no stones left unturned. We are working with both the state and federal administrations on administrative remedies. We're working with the state and federal legislators on legislative remedies, and where necessary and where without other recourse, we are working through the courts. On the administrative side, we'd like to once again request both the Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA to initiate a reconsultation of the biological opinions given the scientific uncertainty and biological conflicts that exist and the clear lack of biological benefits resulting from the implementation of the biological opinions. Models are indicating that there is over 1 million acre-feet of discretionary water immediately available within the existing BOs. Fish and Wildlife Service and NOAA should implement the BOs in a manner that recognizes the lack of technical support for the actions, and we also remind them, that the administration, that there is huge discretion also exists in the implementation of the CBPIA and other regulatory measures. I'd like to point to this graph that's behind me, and it's not very good, and I hope you can see it. This is an example of the discretion that's currently available under the existing biological opinions, both for salmon and delta smelt. If you look at this graph, the x-axis is the hydrology under dry, average, and wet year, and the y-axis is the allocation to CDP South and Delta contractors. The red line is the operations under the biological opinions for delta smelt and salmon under the most restrictive operations for Old and Middle River regulations. And the blue line is the operations under the least restrictive operations. Taking a look at the average hydrology, which is right in the middle, the difference between operating under a most restrictive and least restrictive operation is the difference between a 0 allocation and a 30% allocation to CDP South contractors. So therefore, we ask that the fishery agencies use their discretion to operate under the least restrictive standards under the biological opinion. That is probably our only means of survival for 2010. We know and appreciate Interior's policy level recognition of the crisis and their commitment to address the crisis. However, this policy level recognition and commitment isn't always playing out in the field. Operational policies for rescheduling, WARNAC contracts, and even some cases, transfers, still meet unavoidable bureaucratic obstacles that don't reflect the crisis and urgency of the CDP South and Delta contractors. Unreasonable obstacles and the inability to get the appropriate permits to move forward on a project such as 2 gates and refuge water level 2 diversification, level 4 enhancement projects has been incredibly frustrating and a waste of water, time, and resources, and reflects a business as usual approach in a time of crisis. This is not meant to be overly critical, and we know there have been many people working very diligently, working hard on these issues, but there is no margin for errors or lack of urgency. Last but certainly not least, I feel a need to note the incredible financial investment burden that water users are faced with. While they are battling for survival supplies for the next year, they are investing in long term. Unprecedented investments are being made by water users on the Delta Habitat Conservation and Conveyance Program and the Bay Delta Conservation Planning process. This is at a time when water shortage-driven land fallowing is producing no income. Our ag service contractors have experienced a tenfold increase in water dues over the last several years. In closing, we have yet another incredibly challenging year in front of us. We at the authority are committed to working with state and federal agencies and the legislators in obtaining water for South of Delta contractors and to treat this issue to reflect the crisis that it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. Now, we already called on Tom Birmingham, and Tom, you did a fantastic job explaining to everyone what's going on. Do you need to say anything else? Okay, well, let me say from both Jim and I, we trust you, we appreciate the advice you give us on a daily basis, and thank you for what you're doing to try and help coordinate this. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom is not just the expert on Westlands, but he is one of the experts in the entire state and western states on water, and works tirelessly. I had a call with Tom on the day before Thanksgiving, and he says, well, call me tomorrow. And I said, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. He goes, I work until noon. And so that's the kind of commitment, that's a true story that happened during our November break. And you should know that there are dedicated public servants like Tom working on this crisis. Next up, I want to call up Steve Chedister from the San Joaquin River Exchange Contractor. Steve, thank you. I don't know if you heard that, but Kim was complaining that Tom gets off at noon on Thanksgiving Day, and he didn't. So.
Thank you, Dennis. I do want to thank the Congressman for putting this together and getting us all here to talk about the water situation. What I'd like to do, because of the shortness of time, is just maybe emphasize a couple of points that was made earlier with the earlier panel. One of them would be, I think, flexibility. We need the most optimal flexibility that we can have. And now, as I know, I look over at Ron Milligan, they've done all that they can do on being flexible. That is operations. You know, the exchange contractors obviously are a little bit different, but some of the things they've been working on for several years has been water transfers. They are doing water transfers to the local west side and also to the local refuges. And as much flexibility as we can be given to be able to help with low point issues in San Luis Reservoir, that is the kind of tools that we need to get us through the short-term issue, though. But again, it's only short-term. We understand that. The long-term also need to work on. I do want to say that I support 100% what Francis and the Water Authority has said. Our members, which are you, a lot of you, are the same members to the Water Authority, and they're supporting, again, financially and otherwise, the longer-term solutions such as conveyance, storage. One of the tools, or one of the things I could bring out that I know Don's not here today probably, is that Don Glazer had said earlier, late last year at Aqua, was we need to think outside of the box. And we need to do that. And as much as we can within legal limits, we need to think outside of the box. One of the things that's probably going to get me a little bit of crossways with some of our other water brethren is that we need to look at also some of the issues such as San Luis Reservoir looking to be very low this year. You guys all know that. We're talking about bringing water down the San Joaquin River for restoration purposes. That's a settlement. Maybe there's something we got to look at there at the Mendota Pool to change some of the timing on that so we can help local west side, at least for a while, and then move it on down the road. Now, I can see Ron's probably going to want to kick me, but again, if you want to think outside the box, and it's not for a biological reason, we need to look at those kind of efforts to make sure that we can do the best that we can do to bridge this short-term gap. Because as was said earlier, if you're all dead, it doesn't do any good to have a long-term solution. We've got to go short-term, medium, and long-term. With that, we do appreciate the efforts. Again, I want to reemphasize the Bureau has done on trying to allow us to be flexible, try to allow groundwater management opportunities so we can help using our growers' resources to help mitigate some of the impacts short term, realizing we can't do it to the extent that we harm our own constituents. So with that, I had more, but we'll just go on the short term basis. That's what I can talk to you about, and hope we can be further assistance.
Thank you, Steve, for both your comments. Those are my for your comments and your brevity. I appreciate it. One of the things that may not be readily apparent, but I can tell you that working on this on a daily and weekly basis is that these are incredibly complex issues. What Steve just talked about being creative, we need to do that. But every time we try and step outside the box, we also affect other water users, and it creates other conflict. And I will tell you, in my personal experience, I've been in government where I ran for the city council for my first time at the age of 23. And in all this period of time that I have known about government and been observer of government, I have never seen an issue that is more complex than this. And it defies a lot of solutions, because every time we try and be innovative, we get stymied. And it's terribly frustrating for all of you and as well for us.